Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Mike DeFabo on from The Athletic. I want to talk about Arthur Smith. His biggest challenge, is it running the football or is it finally unlocking the middle of the field for the passing offense? We'll talk about those and outlook on the Steelers' inside linebacker situation. And with the schedule set to release tonight, we'll take a look at the best and worst case scenarios for the Steelers. And now we know they're playing in Ireland, what factors could play into there. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. More on them later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Mike DeFabo. He's from The Athletic, the Steelers writer there. Mike, we're gonna get into the schedule things later. We know the Steelers are playing in Ireland. Real quick before we dive into Arthur Smith, Alan and I were talking about the most obscure things that Aaron Rodgers could do that would be so Pittsburgh to like signal that he's coming to the Pittsburgh. We came up with starting a sell the team chant at PNC Park. Is there something that you could think of that would be more Pittsburgh than that?
Well, I saw Aaron Rodgers, and he put a parking chair outside of a pierogi restaurant to save his spot. I don't know. That's a rumor that I heard. It's going around, Chris.
That's Pittsburgh. That's extremely Pittsburgh. Mike, put Mike DeFabo on the list. We're gonna create a competition of who can come up with the best Pittsburgh things, and I want to make this like a poll later. So,
I was saying, I tweeted something with Photoshop when all this drama first started, saying that I saw Aaron Rodgers at get-go, and he's still trying to decide whether to use his fuel.
That was you,
which is a very real thing. Which is a really real thing, Chris, because every time that I'm at get-go, I feel like I'm on Deal or No Deal. They're like, you've got 24 cents that you could save, deal or no deal.
That's amazing. Okay, so we got some contenders for obscure things that Aaron Rodgers should do to announce that he's signing with the Steelers. But let's dive into talking about the guy that Aaron Rodgers is going to work with. That's Arthur Smith. Now, Mike, there has been a lot of talk about a few things that Arthur Smith needs to do. For me, the biggest objective the Steelers must accomplish this season, on top of winning and getting of improving a specific part of their team, is the offensive line has to take a step forward. They have to take a step forward in pass protection, but especially in the run game. This has to be a unit that's more cohesive in getting to their spots, winning their blocks, and setting up the rushing lanes for Jaylen Warren, Kaleb Johnson, Trey Sermon. Now, whoever's in the mix, they need to make sure that works there. But a lot of fans have been clamoring for the Steelers since Randy Fichtner left, for the Steelers to target the middle of the field. Matt Canada didn't do it that often with his offense. Last year, Arthur Smith didn't do it with his offense. Now, there are reasons for that. But for you, Mike, what is more important to this team right now as a priority for the Steelers to get right? Or are these two things something that come hand in hand?
Well, if I were to pick between the two of them, I would actually say running the football is more important because of the fact that is the identity this team is trying to build. And the Steelers ran the ball the fourth most in the NFL last year. But just because you run the football a lot does not mean you're good at it. And the Steelers were not particularly efficient. They were 25th in yards per carry with 4.1. Their total offensive EPA per rush was 29th. Negative 78.5. Their offensive success percentage on running plays was again 25th at 36%. And so the reason why I would say the run game is more important is because even if Aaron Rodgers comes in and plays this season as the starting quarterback, you have to look at the long-term vision. And for me, I keep looking ahead to 2026. And if you say our offensive line that we've made significant repeated investments in took a big step forward, this running back that we drafted, Kaleb Johnson, fits in perfectly. And now we're not just a team that runs the ball a lot. We're really good at it. Well, that puts whoever the quarterback is in 2026 in a really good position where you've got DK Metcalf. You've got a good offensive line that's coming together. You've got a new running back that after a year should take that sophomore, second year step forward. That would be the ideal scenario for me. And that's, to me, why it was the most disappointing thing about the offense last year wasn't that, they flamed out at the end of the year and things came undone. To me, it was that offensive line that was supposed to be the strength of your team hadn't yet become that. And if by the end of the year, the offensive line is the reason why the Steelers are winning football games, I think that's putting them on a better trajectory long term.
And listen, part of that, you could also say, Troy Fautanu never played. James Daniels was looking like their best guy, was knocked out early, but you were hoping to see more out of Broderick Jones, and the rookie wall that was that Mason McCormick and Zach Frazier hit, that was tough. But I agree with you. Like, looking at this year, if those guys get that, then not only does that mean that you're set moving forward, it also most likely means you don't have to reinvest at that position, which I think is what the Steelers have to do. Because how much of what the Steelers are trying to do right now is kind of slowed down because they've missed on so many picks. They had to go back and double dip at safety with Minkah Fitzpatrick in that trade because Terrell Edmonds wasn't working out and other things weren't working out at the safety position. They had to right now next year they're looking at quarterback again because they got it wrong with Kenny Pickett. They're still looking at wide receiver because they haven't gotten it right with a lot of guys to stick around for a long time. And the offensive line, if they can get that right and make it so that, hey, they're not drafting another tackle in the second round next year, the third round next year, or the first round in 2 years, because, again, next year, first round, you're probably looking at quarterback. But if they can be in that position where, hey, you don't have to invest in this group with a heavy draft pick for several years, that could be really beneficial to this team. Heck, that's what the 2010 Steelers did. After they got Pouncey and DeCastro and Gilbert early, they kind of filled in around them. And now you could say, like, around 2017, 2018, maybe they should have gone back to address the offensive line, but it at least gave them those years in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, where they could just say, hey, let's go get Ryan Shazier. Let's go get Bud Dupree. And then, we're also going to get TJ Watt. And that helped build that defensive nucleus that really worked for them for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that Broderick Jones really is entering a pivotal year for himself because as a rookie, I really thought that he showed flashes. And to me, the thing that was most interesting, or like the biggest piece of optimism, was his mobility and his ability to get out into space, block guys on the second level, things like that. You didn't see that as much out of him. And I wonder if, what type of shape is he going to come into this year and how committed is he going to be? And I think that he really is at such a significant position, because if he turns into what you hope that he was, then you do have those two bookends at tackle and you do have your future set. But if he struggles again, you do have to wonder, like, how do you address that position? Is that something that you want to do? So I think that he's one of the most important players, and especially if Aaron Rodgers does sign here. I think we've talked about it before in the show, Chris, but Aaron Rodgers, one of the most pass-happy quarterbacks in the league last year, also the worst quarterback in the league against the blitz. So if you've got a quarterback who's in his 40s, he's not far removed from an Achilles injury. He was once a very mobile, dynamic athlete on the run. He's lost some of that mobility due to age and injury. If your left tackle is not protecting him, it could be a long season.
It absolutely could. And part of what helps get those passes over the middle, by the way, is when you can run the ball well, and then you can create a balanced offense that says, hey, the linebackers, they got to take their first two steps, got to be to the line of scrimmage. Then all of a sudden, Pat Freiermuth gets a little bit more space over the middle. Those slants start to open up. And at least just last year, Aaron Rodgers, over 53% of his yards and 57% of his touchdowns came over the middle part of the field, something that the Steelers would like to see more of in their offense.
Yeah, so while I would say that the most important thing is for the Steelers to run the football better this season and more efficiently, I do think that if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, you're going to see a significant uptick in the amount that the Steelers target the middle of the field. So Chris and I, we were going into the Locked On Steelers podcast stats and information department before this, and
we do not have that much money. We use Google.
Garrett Wilson last year, Jets receiver, led the league with 79 slants run. Alan Lazard, another Jets receiver, was third with 62. Devontae Adams, who spent half of the season with the Jets, was sixth with 57 slants. So Aaron Rodgers wants to run a precise offense. He threw the ball. He had the second most attempts behind only Joe Burrow. So he wants to throw the ball a ton. He's willing to target over the middle. He's willing to throw the ball deep over the middle. So just the quarterback alone is going to change that. And look, like Arthur Smith's offense wants to throw the ball over the middle. The only reason the Steelers didn't last year is because Russell Wilson was allergic to it. Like because of his height, he had a hard time seeing over the line of scrimmage. And at this point in his career, his only, like, throughout his career, he was a great deep ball thrower. That's the one thing that's still there with Russell Wilson, as we saw. So they did target outside. They did throw the ball outside, but that was a Russell Wilson thing, not an Arthur Smith thing. And it was almost Arthur Smith adapted to meet the needs of the quarterback in that situation and changed his own philosophy to try to fit the quarterback. So if he gets a guy who wants to throw it over the middle, willing to do so, that would more so be in line with Arthur Smith's philosophy and what he's trying to do.
We'll see how he continues to align that this year. We still got to see officially. Does Aaron Rodgers come? Is he at get-go playing deal or no deal, trying to get the best option to use his points for gas points?
I never know what to do. What do? Do you just always say yes, or do you let it ride?
So apparently they don't roll over at the end of the month. So I try to build them up until I really need them. Yeah, but Tiana told me that. I didn't even know. So like I was like, what? And so I started using my points a lot more. But I have so many perks that stacked up. There's certain fuel perks don't carry over, but other perks do. It's weird. Get-go points. That's a whole other topic. We're going to switch topics though. We're going to go to the inside linebackers, because I do think that's going to be a more interesting group than people realize about how they get used this upcoming season. That'll be next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I remind you, the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live throughout the games. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Between Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, SGA, Jaylen Brunson, and Tyrese Halliburton, there's so many stars and players to give you your best shot at hitting a same-game parlay. If you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. It's a great deal to take advantage of the NBA playoffs. New to FanDuel, be sure to sign up at FanDuel.com. Again, that's $5. If your first bet of $5 or more hits, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of the Athletic. Mike, let's talk inside linebackers, because inside linebackers has been a position the Steelers have tried to fix. I won't say they completely fixed it last year, but it has been on the rise. It used to be a gaping hole in the Steelers defense, and now it's more so of a solid position. I wouldn't say like very good just yet. Patrick Queen, had his ups and downs last year. I thought Payton Wilson showed a lot of promise, but now Landon Roberts, a guy who was really, really good, and I thought was a perfect fit for what they were asking to him to do at linebacker. He's out. They bring in Malik Harrison, but also there's the potential return of Cole Holcomb, who is now out of what has been a very long recovery from an injury he suffered back in 2023. Your outlook of how this linebacker unit is shaping up for OTAs in a couple weeks here, Mike, what do you expect to be the primary rotation to be for the Steelers at linebacker? And also Carson Bruner, I forgot about him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's another guy there in Carson Bruner as well. Well, that is going to be one of the interesting things through training camp, OTAs and training camp, is to see how they actually split things up. But let's just look historically at what they've done. The last couple of years, they've relied on a 3-man rotation, and who they play is determined by down, distance, personnel package. Okay, so our guy Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen is your all situations linebacker. So whether they're in base defense on first down, nickel on second, dime on third, you know that Patrick Queen is going to be in the game. Okay. So that settles that. Then who lines up next to him is dependent upon typically what package they're in. And so when they were in their base defense and you're looking for a big, tough run stuffer, that was a Landon Roberts. Now, it sure looks like Malik Harrison is a one-for-one replacement. And he is another guy that is bruising, physical, downhill type of guy. Within the Ravens scheme, it was a 4-3, and he also played some defensive end sometimes when they were in that. So he has some versatility, but I think that will be in the base defense who mostly starts. Then Payton, because of his speed and because of his coverage ability, when they go to nickel, that's going to be your guy. And then in dime, it's just one linebacker. It's just Patrick Queen typically. But what I'm interested to see is now that Payton Wilson has been with the Steelers for a year, how does his playing time grow? And I wonder, will he have opportunities to contribute more on regular rundowns? And that could come in different ways. It could be either in the base defense. And really, like if you're looking for a weakness that Payton Wilson needs to improve, it's being more physical, getting off blocks, which is the reason why they aren't playing him in the base. But maybe within year two, he's better at some of those things and carves out a little bit more. The other part of it is I could very much see the Steelers playing more nickel this year. Not just the regular nickel, but also their big nickel where they have Juan Thornhill, another addition as the de facto nickel in that package as well. So that's kind of how I look at it. So I wonder, where will Cole Holcomb find a place, and what does Carson Bruner mean to it? Because special teams is a very important component in this conversation as well. So typically I think they dress 4 inside linebackers, but Payton Wilson played on special teams and Mark Robinson played on special teams. So now let's say you dress, how many are you going to dress this year? Malik Harrison is a core special teamer, and before Landon Roberts wasn't. So does that provide them some flexibility to dress a guy like Cole Holcomb, who's not going to contribute on special teams? I think these are all the variables that are going to be part of this conversation.
I think that's the thing here is playing time across the board, keeping guys fresh is all part of it. And also their biggest uses. I was really high on Payton Wilson in the draft process. People remember I was like hyping him, like, look, I get his knees might be an issue, but that man flies and he hits. And if he can get the part of disengaging with offensive linemen in the hole down, like he could be like a serious weapon in the middle part of the defense. You remember the interception that he had on Lamar Jackson where he just ran step for step and ripped the ball out of the guy's hands. That's the kind of stuff that can make you a dynamic threat in the middle part of the field. And if he continues to develop, especially in coverage, those are things that Ryan Shazier used to do to just erase games, or just not to erase game, but be an X factor player where like so many times, like if you just if you were a little off over the middle part of the field, he'd be jumping a pass, and he had size and he had speed and athleticism. If Payton Wilson can get to that level and be an every down backer, it could be a really good long-term plan for the Steelers to just pair him with Patrick Queen. And then all of a sudden you have a lot more flexibility because then you have 2 guys that fly sideline to sideline, hit and cover.
Yeah, definitely. I like Payton Wilson a lot. And really that's the thing with him is like he has the speed, but he is a bit undersized. And that is the big knock on him, was like getting off of blocks. So how much he improves will determine how much he can be used on rundowns. So, I think he's an ascending player, though. I think the Steelers are really high on him. He won like every award that there is to win in college during his final season there. So as long as he stays healthy, I think that he's a guy that definitely has the potential to exceed his draft position.
Absolutely. One more look at Cole Holcomb. I thought Cole Holcomb was fitting in well in 2023 when he was playing. He looked like he was figuring it out. And this was their first tip to just say, you know what, we're just going to raise the whole group. It was him, Quan Alexander, and then they also got destroyed with injuries that season.
Yeah, they all got hurt.
It was ridiculous. Landon Roberts was playing at the end of the year injured, and that was just another credit to his abilities. But is it realistic to expect anything? If a lot from Cole Holcomb, because when I look at him and I look at like, hey, they signed him originally to be this guy in the middle part of the field that was going to command the defense. Now you brought in Patrick Queen to do that. is it more like hey, it's a bonus if he does that, or is it like no, they could really use him to just turn out to be that guy, and him and Patrick Queen are the answers, and then Payton Wilson then just has another year to grow behind him.
Yeah, well, when they brought in Cole Holcomb, he was the Patrick Queen. He was the all situations, all purpose inside linebacker. And then only when he got injured, the Steelers, that forced their hand really, where they needed somebody significant at a position that has been a problem for them. So I just wonder, I haven't seen him enough to know, especially in a real environment like a game, to know what is he after this injury. And that's what I was curious about. Like, has this robbed him of a bit of his speed? And so maybe does he fit better on rundowns as that downhill guy, kind of like the Landon Roberts? Or does he still have enough speed? But I think the fact that they renegotiated his contract, to me, that was more of like, hey, we might have to cut you, but if you take this pay cut, we won't. And we can give you an opportunity to stay with the team, show us something, and additionally, maybe show other teams what you have. So he still is an X factor. And look, this is a guy that had to walk on in college. Like, he didn't even have, in a world where so many of these guys in the NFL are 5-star guys who've been highly touted their whole careers, he had to earn his way just to get to North Carolina and to play there. And then he wasn't invited to the combine. It was only because he had a fantastic pro day that he got himself drafted. So this is a guy who hasn't taken no for an answer before. Even this injury, I think some guys might have been like, this is debilitating. This is going to be career ending. He loves football. He wants to be a contributor. So I have a hard time counting him out. And that would be the last thing I'd want to do until it actually happens. So, we'll have to wait and see, but they definitely have some pieces. And then with Carson Bruner too, you just wonder how much do they prioritize that special teams? Because that guy, he doesn't have the sideline to sideline, like lateral agility, but straight line speed is there, and he's a tackling machine. He is the perfect special teams type guy. And it's just a matter of roster math, figuring out, is he going to be active on game day, or is Cole Holcomb? How do you figure that out?
Right. I think that's going to be a lot of factors that play into here with Tara Loston and that crew as far as how they want to use those guys. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the schedule's set to release tonight. We do know when and where and who. Well, we always know the where, but we knew when and who the Steelers are playing in Ireland. We'll talk about that, scenarios the Steelers could look out for with that schedule release, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo, stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Mike, seemed like it was the worst kept secret in the world that the Steelers were going to play Week 4 in Ireland, in Dublin, Ireland, against some team. But people were asking, would it be the Packers? Would it be the Vikings? Turns out it is the Vikings. Week 4 at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time kickoff. What was your reaction to see that is, and how excited are you to go to see Ireland? Do you have any Irish things that you want to do while you're there?
I do have some Irish things that I want to do. We're gonna have to be splitting a couple G's, Chris. Maybe kiss the Blarney Stone.
Oh God.
No, but I think that this is gonna be really fun. I can't wait to go over there. I've never been to Ireland, and my little sister lives in London, and I don't get to see her very much. So she's gonna actually make the trip over. My dad has season tickets to the Steelers and put in for the lottery. So personally, I'm excited about it. But I think it should be an awesome experience too, just to see, I'm curious to see how interested are these people from Ireland to see football, and how knowledgeable are they? How passionate are they? I think it could be a really cool event.
I think it will be too. Another thing that I did some research about, because I was just trying to judge, what's going to happen around this Ireland game. Because, one thing people are like, oh yeah, Ireland is great. It is a challenge for a team to take all of its people, take it overseas, to adjust to a whole different schedule and have them ready for what is effectively a 9:30 kickoff in the morning. And you're dealing with sleep schedules, training schedules. It's not just sleep, it's training schedules. It's trying to get your body wired to perform the best, because so much of what what they do throughout the week is to get if you have a 1 p.m. kickoff, we want you to be at your best to avoid injury, to be as sharp as you can, to come out fresh, and then also keep you on schedule to be ready for next week because you're on that schedule. When you switch that far of a time zone difference, it can have an effect. Like I talked to guys that cover the Steelers back when they last played the Vikings overseas. That was back in 2013 when they played the Vikings also in week 4 in London. And like they were talking about how like Lamar Woodley was coming up to the podium and he was just struggling to stay awake because he was just not dealing with the time zone shift well. And sometimes it's harsher on your bodies. But one thing, I started looking this up just to check this out and to see it. Last year, when there were with all the teams that went international, and that was the Jaguars twice, the Bears, Vikings, Jets, Patriots, Giants, Panthers, Eagles, and Packers. In all of those games, except for 2 teams, the next week was was a home game, and those 2 teams that didn't have home games was the Jaguars, who just stayed in London and played again, or the Bears, who had a bye week. And also all but 3 of those teams had home games the week before they went international. The one team that didn't have a home game the week before was they had an away game was the Vikings. The other 2 teams that didn't was the Eagles and Packers because they played at the start of the season. So looking at that, it could be a situation where this game maybe it does get sandwiched by either 2 home games or a home game and a bye week for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think maybe not a bye week just because it's so early in the season. Yeah. I guess the way it used to work, I thought, was that they basically automatically gave you the bye and then you could decline it. I heard that's not true anymore because there's so many international games, they just can't guarantee the bye after. So with it being week 4, I don't think that it's going to be – I think they'll just play a regular game, and hopefully for the Steelers it would be home. That would eliminate at least one variable in one piece of the travel. But, I mean, you can only imagine how difficult it is for your body to – if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers player – all the time you have to be at your best at basically 11:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night in the fourth quarter of a primetime football game. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to have to be at your best at 9:30 in the morning. And that definitely is challenging. And that'll be definitely one piece of it. And I think a lot of teams like to go over a bit early. I would imagine the Steelers will go over like Wednesday to try to get their bodies ready and start adjusting that time zone.
I definitely think it's going to be part of it. Now, let's talk about the rest of the schedule, which we don't know where anyone else is officially slotted at yet. I haven't seen any of the leaks about the rest of the Steelers schedule. But whereas we do know week 4, September 28th against the Vikings, which will count technically as a home game for the Steelers. So they will they'll have their other games to look at here. The Vikings were a 14-win team last year, so that's a pretty good win. We know how the Steelers got slotted. You know, their schedule got slotted last year, where they played just that death row at the end of the season, which coincided with a 5-game losing streak. Looking at the non-divisional opponents that the Steelers could be slotted throughout the rest of the season. You have at the Bears, at the Lions, at the Chargers, at the Patriots, at the Jets. Then you have Bills at home, Dolphins at home, Packers at home, Colts at home, Seahawks at home. There's a few teams in there that could be a murderer's row if they get set up again. I look at the Bills as one. They're a perennial Super Bowl threat with Josh Allen and the crew that they have there. The Vikings could be dangerous if they're paired with another team, especially with that being an international game. The Lions, with how good that they've been. Maybe the Chargers if they take a step up with the second year of the Harbaugh regime. But the Steelers also could luck out if the Bears and Ben Johnson don't take off right away. If the Colts are still kind of hanging around, if the Packers are that team that I still don't know which way they're going with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. But I think there's a chance the Steelers, maybe they don't get stuck with a murderer's row. But of course, this also depends on what does the division look like, because if the Bengals and Ravens are just top dogs and battling it out, as much as they have in some past years, that could also make it real tough to find soft spots in the schedule.
Yeah, there's not a lot of soft spots when you look at the schedule. Like, who would you say is even the easiest opponent? Probably the Cleveland Browns, I guess.
Maybe the Dolphins.
Yeah, but the Dolphins, they're one of those teams that could go either way. Like going into last year, a lot of people expected them to make the playoffs, and they had an underwhelming year. Tua is still dealing with a lot of the injury stuff, but if they improve this year, that's not the easiest game in the world. So there's a lot. I guess the Jets could be one of the easier opponents, hypothetically. It'll be interesting to see our old buddy Justin Fields, the Bears. Who knows what they're going to be this year? But like, there's a lot of really talented teams. Like, I would say who are the best teams in the AFC? The Kansas City Chiefs. Then you got to
Mhm.
say the Baltimore Ravens. You got to say
Bills.
the Bills. And I think that so you play both of those teams. The Vikings and Detroit Lions are two of the top teams in the NFC. You got to play both of those teams. So this could be, even though there's probably not going to be that same murderer's row, this could be maybe a tougher schedule than it was last season.
It could be, and for Steelers fans, I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking like, "What? How could that even be?" They played everybody last year. They played the Ravens, Eagles, Chiefs in the span of 11 days or whatever it was. But I mean, hey, that's where it goes. And again, if we determined everything based off of just what they did the year before, wouldn't always be accurate as far as who actually turns out to be really good. But like you look at some of these opponents. And where they were last year, if we're counting just playoff teams, you had what the Packers made the playoffs, the Bills made the playoffs, the Ravens made the playoffs, the Chargers made the playoffs, the Lions made the playoffs, and the Vikings made the playoffs. So you're talking at least half your schedule, maybe a little bit more. Of being playoff teams over this year. And again, that doesn't guarantee that those teams are going to be that good, and it doesn't say that like teams like the Bengals aren't going to rise up for where they were last year.
That's what I was going to say. I think sneakily the most important games in the schedule are against the Bengals, because the way I look at the Steelers, I don't think that they're going to win the division. And I think in order to earn a playoff spot, they're going to have to edge out the Bengals. And so those two head-to-head matchups, I think, will have a lot to say about, are the Steelers an 11-win team that's going into the playoffs, or are they an 8 or 9-win team that misses out?
Yeah, and the Bengals got their fair share of problems. Trey Hendrickson showed up to their OTAs, but
they still don't have a defense.
Yeah, they still don't have a defense.
Joe Burrow doesn't play safety.
No, I think they still got a lot of questions. There's no guarantee the Bengals, but as long as Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are there as a trio, they are dangerous, and the Steelers have seen that over their time. But again, it just depends on how guys will play out. We finally get to see what the schedule will be tonight. I will have a reaction shortly after that up here. I'll actually be on Channel 11 WPXI for our live schedule release show. Go to WPXI.com to check that out. But of course, tune back into Locked On Steelers, where I give you my full reaction to how that, and we'll talk about that in tomorrow's episode. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can always find me on Twitter at Mike DeFabo, and read all my stuff in The Athletic.
Absolutely. He's Mike DeFabo. I'm Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me here, find me on all the social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Carter Critique, same handle everywhere. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow with more on the Steelers official schedule right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.